Okay, guys. So today we are going to take a look on the initial like React.js roadmap. Not initial, but we will cover all of the things, like what things are necessary to be on the React technology stack. So as you guys know, React is a very popular and high demand technology stack from the software industry. So in the React.js, so we are going to take a look from basics, very basics, towards the higher level. So covering all of the topics. So the main thing about React is actually the React is a JavaScript library. JavaScript is the scripting language for the web applications. So not for the web applications, but nowadays it's very useful for the mobile application technology stack. So React.js is a library from it's been actually founded by Facebook, and it's been maintained by Facebook as well. So nowadays React has actually two kind of things, the two perspectives, I can say, the two versions. So the one is the React.js, and the second one is for the mobile applications, which is React Native. So what we can do
Yes.
is we can start with React.js first, because for the web applications it's been very faster and it's in high demand. So for the React.js, actually what we need earlier in our traditional applications, when we were building websites and web applications using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can see here, learn the basics like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So JavaScript is actually been vanilla JavaScript is actually quite hard to maintain in terms of developing the sites and kind of stuff. So jQuery was a library which came at that time to because assume that if we are actually being if we want to get some input element from our HTML file, so what we can do is document.get element by id and kind of stuff. And if we want to animate some if we want to add animation in some of the elements, so we have to do a lot of vanilla JavaScript. So jQuery was the very amazing concept. It was also a library for build over the JavaScript, so that jQuery can, like vanilla JavaScript, combines and like they exposes methods. Like if I want to animate from if I want to animate an element on the horizontal line from a point to point, so I can only call a single method rather than writing the whole vanilla JavaScript. So this is what jQuery. So developers at that time, actually we took a lot of help, and like everyone was using jQuery at that time. So that was actually the old era of developing the what we can say web applications. So let me go and type here component based architecture React. Okay, so I actually want to cover the main perspective, like what, like after that traditional thing which was going fine, so why actually the whole era moved over React. So I want to cover the main perspective, like what were actually the main thing through which everyone like moved over that. So let me
Right. Right.
yeah, so let me cover what is good for you to understand is okay. So here's a point. Here is a point. Okay, so we can go with this. Okay. Okay. So after everything was going fine, like we were developing the website using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But assume that if we are building our if I'm taking an example of my own portfolio, which I built over React.js. So hope so it will be working fine. So I will show you guys. So at that time, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript were actually the main things, and we are developing the websites. So the whole page, like if I'm taking an example of Amazon.com, if we are taking an example of Amazon.com, so Amazon is actually this whole page is actually built. This whole page is a single page at that time, at our traditional days. So that was what, like, assume that there is an home page. Inside that home page, we are having with this header, we are having with these pop-ups, and we are having with all of these cards. So this is the whole a single HTML page inside which we are running our JavaScript, and if we are writing the CSS and all, right? So now assume that if there is a bug came, or kind of any API fail, like assume that the whole homepage. So assume that this shop by category card API, you have an idea of API, right? Backend API. Do you know?
Right.
Okay. So assume that there is an API which fails. So API fails for this shop by category. So whole page will not work, because the whole page is in a single file. So, and also like loading throughout the page is like kind of very because loading the page in below 10 seconds is the optimum one. So but nowadays, as we are on the component based architecture like Angular, React, and Vue.js, so these things are actually being minimized. So so now like these kind of hectics are actually we were facing. So calling the API calls over throughout the like home page, and like single pages are actually been covering all of the things. So code were actually very messy, like everything is in a single
so
file.
rest of the state. Right.
Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, so
Aviz, what you're saying is in the Aviz, so what you're saying is earlier, before Node.js came in, it used to be a single page. The entire thing would have one common code.
Yeah.
So if one part of it fails, then the whole page stops loading. Right?
Yeah,
That's
actually,
what you're saying.
exactly. So this is what
Got it.
this is what actually I am saying. So
got it. Okay.
okay, so this is what actually we were getting the things. So but nowadays actually that's why actually we are moving on the like those kind of things over the React.js. So this was the actually the main reason. This was actually the main reason, like everyone had moved over those things. Right.
What
So
was that old system called?
sorry.
What was the name of that old system before React?
Actually,
what was the
before React, people were developing the websites for like multiple programming languages. Like if I'm taking an example of like React, React was not, Ruby on Rails. So Ruby on Rails has its own views. Like a Ruby on Rails developer can responsible for making the front end as well. Like in the Ruby on Rails, we are having with ERB files, HTML files. So in that actually they were covering the HTML part as well. So but those HTML parts are actually been very hard to maintain, like in for every technology stack. So now actually there is I can let me microservices now actually now that approach was the monolithic approach, right? Now we are actually moved over the microservices. So what a microservices is, let me also explain to you like what's the difference between monolithic and the microservices architecture, so you guys can have a better idea. So what I want to say, right? So but that was actually the main reason. Like if you can see, this is my portfolio. So inside my portfolio you can you can see there are actually with the React.js, these are actually separate components. Like this slider is a separate component, and this bar with the technology stack, this is a separate component, and this slider of technology stack which is running, so this is a separate component. This about us section is a separate component. Education is a separate component. So React.js is a component based library. So whatever now a bunch of component actually combines and they make a React.js higher order component. Like this homepage is what? This is a main higher order component. So multiple higher order components combines and make a whole website. Did you got my point?
So one thing, this HTML, CSS, JavaScript, is it common to React and Angular and Ruby on Rails?
No. That's not very common to Ruby on Rails and kind of because those are separate technologies. Like if I'm talking about React, so React is a library built over JavaScript, right? And if I'm talking about Angular, so Angular is a framework. It's not a library. Angular is a framework which is built over JavaScript, but it is using TypeScript by default. So TypeScript is what? TypeScript is a JavaScript with typings. So that's what actually I'm recording this video to have a better idea for you guys to understand like what the things are, because I will be covering very minor things that's not required, but I will be covering those for the future understandings and for the easiness for you guys. Right?
So is there anything common between JavaScript and TypeScript, or they're
No.
completely
Like everything is common, everything is same, but only there are actually few things which you are covering. Like with the JavaScript, that's not necessary to define a type of a variable, but in TypeScript we should have to do. Right? But inside the JavaScript we don't have default clarification for making interfaces. So but in TypeScript we have those interfaces, though these are kind of a very detailed thing you might not understand at this point, but if I will if I will think like this should be very necessary, so I will cover with you guys, don't worry. Okay,
Sure. So Aviz, could I say that JavaScript and TypeScript have maybe 70% in common?
Yeah, we can say that.
Got it. Okay.
So okay, so HTML, CSS, what is about HTML? HTML is actually a semantic HTML for making and structuring our web application, right? So whatever you can see, if I'm going to the inspect element of this Amazon.com, so whatever you can see here, so that body, that script, that div, this is what HTML. The whole code you are looking here is HTML. This one, this is a HTML, right? This is the JavaScript. If you can see inside the script tag, so this is JavaScript. So this is what we were doing in our traditional applications, right? But I can show you Amazon. Let me see on which technology Amazon is. Webalizer. So Amazon is on jQuery. So Amazon is using jQuery, if you can see, right?
Okay. So jQuery is which one?
jQuery was a library before React.js and Angular. JavaScript, with the JavaScript, it's an open source library, jQuery.
Okay, so they're running on an old technology actually, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can see here, like this is the if I can show you how style look like. So this is style. This is CSS part. So if this is a CSS. This is a CSS part, right? So
right.
Yeah, these are actually kind of things. So now. Okay, so JavaScript was I've also give you the better I've give you the little bit of knowledge for JavaScript. What JavaScript is actually, JavaScript is for DOM manipulation, like writing new features and consuming API calls. Because in our let me show you the picture here. So in our website there are actually three parts. One is one is UI. UI is like only making your pages, like assume that this whole Amazon page is a UI. So inside the UI, the whole data is not dynamic. This is static data for the UI. But what is the second part is the backend. Backend is what, if I can show you here in the inspect tab. So I'm telling you guys like how a website contains that part. Either it's on old technology or front end technology, but every website has two or three main fundamental units. So with that, actually, those things are consumed. So if I can show you an API call, like how API look like, so
Huh.
you can see this is the API, right? This is the, if I can show you, if there should be some preview. So give me a second. Okay, so here if I can show you the API. Okay,
Hmm.
this one or this one, preview. Okay, so this is the API call. So this is what the backend developer developed. So backend developer
Huh.
are developing the APIs. So there are actually three developers for building every website or every web application: the front end
Huh.
developer, back end developer, DevOps
Huh.
engineer, right? So front end developer are responsible for making the user interface and consuming the APIs,
Huh.
right? And the
Huh.
backend developers are what? Backend developers are for making your API calls, like on the server side. Like then front end developer should calling, front end developer will be hitting those APIs which are
Right.
developed by the backend developer, right? So this is
Right.
how this flows come over, and whatever the deployments, like making your website live on the server, so these are the works for DevOps engineer, developer operations, right?
Right. I'm like,
Okay,
और
okay.
क्या
So
करता है DevOps engineer apart from making it live on server?
yeah.
I'm asking, what else does a DevOps engineer do apart from making website live on a server?
DevOps engineer is actually responsible for managing your servers. Like if a company is using Amazon Web Services, AWS, so he or she is responsible for making the servers cost effective. Like they are not because Amazon Web Services is as you use as you go. So if you are if your project has unnecessary S3 buckets or kind of an API built it over your server, so they will charge you for those. So this is the main purpose of hiring DevOps engineer to like making sure everything is like in cost control and server is healthy. So those kind of things on some metrics, he or she should have to work on daily basis and perform the operations and making the build
Huh.
pipelines for every new projects they are coming over. So these are the works for DevOps engineer.
So DevOps engineer normally they're hired after website is built or parallelly when the website is built they start
No,
working.
no, for the but I can say, like, if you hire a full stack engineer, so full stack engineer have a great full stack engineer is a whole bunch of like a whole package. So the whole package combines, like if I'm taking an example of me, so I'm a full stack software engineer now. So I'm working on
Huh.
UI, I'm working on front end, I'm working on back end, and I'm also working on DevOps. So this is how a
Okay.
full stack developer looks like. Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's come to the point again. So what we are now covering, so inside the CSS, what CSS is, inside the CSS we are actually beautifying our structure which we written over the HTML, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, let me give me a second. So give me a second, guys. Okay, so now, like as I covered here, so here we are having with the CSS. So CSS is used for CSS is used for
Avis, your voice is stopped, Avis.
Sorry.
Your voice was stopped in between.
Okay, sure. Now you can
Yes.
you can listen. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Give me a second. Okay. So okay. So what we are doing is actually CSS, as I talked about CSS. So CSS is for making your websites looking very beautiful. So beautiful in terms of like looking to the, if you are talking about elementing, and if you are talking about the things, so the things should be like making your sliders, making your input elements and kind of things. So those things should be like covered in those areas. In the CSS you can do that. But with the JavaScript, so inside JavaScript we were having with the ES6. So ES6 is an ECMAScript 6 plus. So we are having with a newer versions on ECMA as well. So they are building new features as well. So ECMAScript is the newer versions of vanilla JavaScript. So this is a JavaScript. So this is how our traditional things look like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript separately in kind of a thing. But now we will talk about like what was the need at that time. So like every technology stack moved over component based architecture and like monolithic and microservices approach. So we will be now taking a look on it. So we can
Sure.
so we can cover like, okay. So there are also other general development skills as well. Like if I'm talking about GitHub, so GitHub is for source control. Like if you are developing any website, so you should have to like you should have to version control your website, or you can host
Yes.
your code base on the GitHub, so that like your team is currently working on it. Like assume that you guys are working on a project, and that project is for any of the projects. So you should have to config and initialize the project from GitHub. So with that GitHub, like assume that in your team there are actually 50 developers. So 50
Right.
developers should work on their own feature branches. Like assume that inside my web application I have assigned a ticket to a developer to build the home page. So one developer should be taking the feature branch for the home page, and he's working on it. Another developer
Right.
is working on the contact us form, so he is working on it. So the third developer is working on the backend API for the contact form, so he is working on it. So separately,
Right.
parallelly,
Huh.
50 developers are working on your code base in a single repository. So this is the main power of GitHub. So
Right.
with that GitHub, you can see the releases, you can see everything. Like assume that there is a release after 15 days. So with that 15 days, if 50 developers had worked on their features and they have opened a pull request, so GitHub also manages their automatic releases. So you can see in those 15 days what are the things that are actually built and who built that. So everything. So
Right.
GitHub is actually very important topic. So other things like design patterns, data structure, these are some deep kind of things, so we will not cover here. So let's move on the React.js, right? So
Huh.
as I talked about the main purpose, like what were our traditional applications look like. So now moving onwards to the React. So React.js is a component based architecture, as I already said. So the main purpose of that component architecture is like architecture based thing is The main reason, if you can see on my screen as well, but not on the Twitter Spaces, I am on the Google Meet, so you can. Okay, so here let's talk about like what were the main need for moving from the uh, monolithic approach to microservices architecture. So monolithic approach was this we can build also over the like Angular and React.js as well, but this is the example for moving from our traditional applications towards the Angular, React, and next generation JavaScript frameworks and libraries like Angular and React.js, Vue.js kind of thing. So if you can see, as I already told you, on the on the left hand side, monolithic architecture, UI, data access layer, and business logic. So these three things were the whole thing, which will combine.
Got this concept of monolithic versus microservices.
Okay.
We can move to next.
Okay. Sure. Okay. So this is kind of a thing. So. But now moving towards React.js is like the building block for React.js is like making our UIs more powerful. So making our UIs more powerful in terms of reusability, in terms of UI structuring. So like if you can see inside every website, there are some building blocks. So assume that there is a logo place, there is a search bar, there is a list of products. So these three chunks are the component. Like assume that not assume that, but this should have to be. So logo, search bar, and a product card. So these three are what? These three are separate components. So we can. Sorry.
Tell me one thing, Avis. Where is the brain of this particular thing? Like, let's say some API data needs to be accessed, right? Is that done by JavaScript?
Yeah. Like with this, you can make your UI structuring with normal HTML, CSS, and that's it.
No. What I'm asking is, let's say I have one particular widget, right? Let's say I have a stock price ka box which I want to show. Now the stock price data has to come from the backend.
Yeah.
Backend when it's okay,
Yes.
it will come, right?
Yes.
So what is the linking? One second, I'm not done. What is the linking element between the front end and the backend? Is it JavaScript or is it something else?
Yeah. That is a JavaScript. API should be developed by a backend developer. Then what you guys have to do once you are done with your UI structuring, so you can consume your API call with fetch method, or you can use Axios, Axios npm for consuming your APIs. So with that you can call the APIs as well, right?
So basically, every component or every box which is here will have its own little brain with which it will interact with the backend.
It depends. Like if I'm talking about logo, so logo component should not consume API, but there should be a config or a normal custom settings API which should have to be done on the very initial load of application, which will take the logo and other initialized settings from the backend, and that you can only assign that URL for logo which come from backend towards your logo component. So it depends.
Got it.
Yeah, it depends. Okay. So with those, like these are actually like with React, actually we can make our UI consistency in terms of making the UI structuring. So that's kind of UI purposes, structuring purposes. So inside the React, let's talk about so with the React there are actually a bunch of things. So I will talk about them. So let me see what was the other one. So okay, so inside this React part, we are having with build tools. We will be talking about package managers, we will be talking about styling part, and we will be talking about a little bit of styled component, or we will be talking about some component state, and we will also talk about Redux as well. So state management is a part of these context and Redux part, right?
Huh.
We will also talk about like webpack, what webpack is. We will also talk about npm scripts as well, and I will be okay. So give me a second, guys. Okay. So inside React, so the first thing we will be we will be moving onwards if we are making our initial application, with the React command, like with the React CLI. So the React application should give you a very starter application by default with a single component on the root with the name of app.js or kind of thing, right?
Huh.
So with that actually I will also go through like how what are actually the files which come over. So
तो
inside there.
एक चीज बता ना, ये कहाँ बनता है? फॉर एग्जांपल, लेट्स से Node.js will be, I think, written in Visual Studio, right? For example, किस में बनता है Node.js?
Node.js is also built over JavaScript. It's a library of JavaScript. Node.js.
I'm not sure how to phrase this question. So basically, you will open one particular window, right? Within that, you'll start all your typing work.
Yeah.
What is that window which you'll open for Node.js?
For the React, actually we can use like VS Code or like any of the IDE. Inside that, like you should have to install your React CLI in your machine, and that's it. Like you can start your React application with like there are actually a bunch of like you can start your React application from like start, like making your files by own in like community, and Facebook recommends to use create React app. So create React app is a terminology which they have built over. So you only have to call like npx create React app and your application name. Like assume that I'm building a weather info application, so only type that name and press enter from your terminal. So on whatever the location you are, so they will make a starter application for you.
Where is that place where I will type that create React app का जो है ना, वो कहाँ टाइप करूँगा मैं?
टर्मिनल में.
टर्मिनल का क्या मीनिंग होता है, वो थोड़ा समझाएंगे?
CMD.
So अच्छा, normal command prompt पे.
So whatever, like inside my this, so I will write that command and they will build a simple dummy application for me, right? So not a dummy application, but an starter application. So with that starter application, you can move over with your like making your architectures, like making your folder strategies, your folder structuring. But it depends on the scope. It depends on the scope.
A basic question. So from that command prompt, you can do Node.js work also, you can do React work also, you can do any work.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, अच्छा. I thought you had to install some specific software environment within which वो coding करते हैं, वैसा नहीं है क्या?
यार वैसा भी है, like you can make that, but as I said, it depends like what you are using. Like assume that inside my React I'm consuming the S3 bucket from Amazon Web Services, so I will have to do the configs from my machine and from respective environments, like staging और kind of, तो वो थोड़ा deep हो जाएगा, ठीक है?
Okay.
But I am covering these things from the basics from the in terms of architecture. So that's what.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So with the React, so we are having with the build tools. Now the first thing we will talking about build tools. So inside the React we are having dependent on the package.json file. So package.json is a backbone of the project. So that's what actually build tools are, the backbone for the project of React.js. So what package.json should do? Package.json should have the dependencies for all of the things and libraries you are using in your project, right? So now if you can say but before going into that, let's talk about package managers. Package managers is like there are multiple package managers like npm and yarn. So npm is used for running your node package manager scripts, because Angular, React, these things are using package manager. So we can start our application, we can build our application, we can test our application with npm commands. So either
package manager, these packages, this is essentially the brain, is it? कि ये click हुआ तो ये होना है, ये click
no
हुआ
no no
तो
no
ये होना है.
no, it's not.
What is the function of this package?
Package manager, as I already said, like package manager is a system, like it's a set of tools we can use to automate installing and upgrading softwares. Like if I'm talking about React, so like npm, if I'm talking about npm, so what npm is like, if we are making a site, so there is a package json file. So inside that package json, like assume that I have created a React application. Now I want to see my application on a browser, right? Like how it look like. So I cannot run this by like a normal traditional application, like I have right clicked on my HTML file and opened that on the browser. So that's not possible. But with the React, what we can do, we can have to take the help from either npm or either yarn. So because if you are creating application from start, so either npm is installed in your machine or either yarn is installed in your machine. So with any of one, you can start your application. So if npm is not installed and yarn is not installed, you cannot make your React application, right?
Understood. So basically ये है तभी हम display कर पाएंगे React का whatever भी हम
exactly with the npm. So npm के through what we can do, जैसे we have created our new application on npm. So let me show you that package.json file. So this is one of my React project. So inside that, this package.json exists. If I'm talking about this package.json exists. So inside this package.json, these libraries are used. Like I'm taking an example of Axios, Bootstrap, jQuery, Node.js, Popper.js, React, so Slick Carousel. So these are the libraries I'm using inside this project. Got my point?
Got it. अच्छा, अभी आप ये डब्बा जो है ये कौन सा, ये विजुअल स्टूडियो है?
विजुअल स्टूडियो.
अच्छा, तो इसमें जो काम कर रहे हैं वो आप कमांड प्रॉम्प्ट पे भी कर सकते हैं, is it?
No. We can't do those in command prompt, but only we can start the application. We can make new application, like only appearing the application from that command prompt. We cannot write code from there, but we can perform some operations. We can perform some commands from terminal or CMD or command prompt. So inside this,
अभी ये Visual Studio का what is this thing called? Is it called a software environment की क्या नाम है?
We can say it's an IDE, integrated development environment, from where we can develop softwares.
Okay. Let me note this down.
Yeah.
IDE. What is the full form? Integrated
development environment.
और क्या alternatives है Visual Studio के अलावा?
Visual Studio के अलावा we have JetBrains IDEs. So we have Microsoft Visual Studio, we have RubyMine. So it depends like on which technology stack you are working. So you can search like what's the best IDE for developing Ruby applications. So Google will find a great thing for you.
अच्छा, so for React normally Visual Studio is the best IDE.
Exactly.
Got it.
Okay, so now in terms of dependencies, I'm using these libraries while building the application. So this is an example for showing this package.json to you to cover the ideas like why we need package managers. So
each library will make your life a little bit easier, I think, right?
Yeah.
Each library will have like a bunch of shortcuts.
Yeah.
So package manager is basically stitching all of those libraries together and helping us display an output.
Exactly. So these are the scripts. So now if I want to run my application, so what I can do, I will be writing npm start. So what it will be doing, npm is the thing. npm is a package manager which is installed in my Mac. right? So now inside the script, these are the commands. So if I'm running start, so that means React scripts should start, right? Got my point?
Got it. So this npm का जो और भी चीज था जैसे yarn है या जो भी पैकेज मैनेजर है, all of them will run inside Visual Studio, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. And basic thing is they're all working to combine all these libraries and display the output.
Yes. Sure. This is this is how it will work. So this was only making you understand like what are these things. So that's what actually.
So which one is the industry standard for package managers?
For package managers, people are using npm and yarn as well. So there's no any such need or standard, but it's dependent on the application scope on which you are currently working. So either like if you are joining a team that's already that's also built a software like from past few years, so अब वो npm पे है या yarn पे है, so you should have to go and work on it.
Got it.
Okay. So package managers, we have covered these package managers thing. Then after we have build tools. So build tools have a very basic idea. Like if I'm talking about Webpacker, so Webpacker is kind of a thing which is actually making your like what we can say, which we can combine your throughout the files, and like they have served your all of the files in a compressed way. So this is what Webpacker do.
अच्छा, compressed way. So basically मतलब जो JavaScript का जो भी front end का जो files है उसका size कम करता है so that user का जल्दी load हो जाए वैसा.
So this is what it's like the main purpose is like we are writing React.js, so React.js we are writing ECMAScript, right? So ECMAScript is not understandable by our browsers, right? So we like our browsers don't understand ES6. So what Webpacker is doing, Webpacker is it's a popular JavaScript tool. It's used for managing and bundling your JavaScript code. So like it's been bundling, it's been converting your code towards converting your codes to vanilla JavaScript so that browsers can understand, and then after like it can easily run over it can run over the browsers as well, right?
अच्छा, one second. This ECMAScript जो है इसके बारे में थोड़ा बताइएगा.
Sorry?
This ECMAScript you are mentioning, no, on which we are running React, ये क्या करता है, ये कहाँ आया था?
ECMAScript is the update. ECMAScript is the newer version over vanilla JavaScript. Like I have also told you, like if I want, like assume that there is a list of people, there is a list of employees. So now I want to perform filtering. So what I have to do before ES6, we don't have certain methods. So what we were doing, we were doing normal traditional programming ways. Like I'm running for loop. Inside that for loop, I'm running the if command. So inside that if command, what I'm doing is like I'm comparing the condition. Like okay, if an employee has a salary above than $2,000, so those employees should be filtered out. So these are the things we were doing inside our before ES6 kind of thing. So we were doing traditional programming ways. We were writing those methods by our own. So after ES6, after ECMAScript, so those vanilla things what we were doing, so those things should be converted in terms of methods so that we can consume rather than wasting our time. So with ECMAScript, so all of the things which were the basic need of a developer, so those things are actually being exposed. Those methods are created inside that ES6 ECMAScript library. So now we are having the upgraded versions like ES6 plus. We are having the updated versions on that. So everything is now pre-built over. You can run rather than making those writing those lines. you only have to run dot filter method, so only you have to pass callback and condition inside that, so it will filter items for you. So this is a very simple example for like why we are using ES6. So inside ES6, like we have also approach for modules, we have also approach for making classes. So like everything was in deep, and it's kind of a very amazing thing if we are comparing it with our
Got it,
traditional
Bhavesh.
apps.
So, Isme, now we saw that package managers manage multiple libraries, right? In all those libraries, does ECMAScript run, or it is one particular library only which runs on that ECMAScript?
No, that's not. Yeah, so inside the webpacker, so the main purpose of webpacker is like, if I can say, like a front end builder system. It's allow you to like write your front end code in a way like it's convenient for developers, and then package that code in a way that it convenient for browsers.
I'm trying to understand link between ECMAScript and libraries.
ECMAScript is not a library. ECMAScript is the updated version of JavaScript, so it's not a library.
It's not a library, but in all libraries, can we write the code in terms of ECMAScript?
It depends. It depends.
Okay. But at least in more than one library, we can run the script, the script in terms of ECMAScript. Write the code with ECMAScript.
Yeah. Exactly. So with that build tools, as I shared you the npm start thing, and kind of these are what? These are task runners. Like every developer, like in terms of our thing, we know about things, we also did those things, but we don't know the specific names of all those things. So if I like as I showed you the npm start and those scripts inside the scripts thing, so those are the npm scripts. So task runners are the part of build tools which can run those scripts. Like as I write npm start, npm build, npm test. So these are what? These are task runners. So they can take help for React scripts to run over those things. Right?
So basically, this is like an extension of that npm package manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Run karta
hai. Exactly. Right. So with the like the other thing is like we will be talking about styling part. So styling is being already covered. So inside the styling we are having with multiple versions, like the SAS, CSS, less, and stylus, right? Give me a second. So with the CSS styling part inside the React.js, so inside the styling we are having with multiple CSS preprocessors. So the one is like CSS, sass, or post CSS, less. These are the points. These are the certain points. Like, but traditionally CSS is being used, but inside Angular by default, like sass is used as an option, as a community standards. But inside the React, people are using CSS, but they are also using sass as well. So the main purpose of using sass is the like as I told you the example of ES6 for converting those towards vanilla JavaScript with the help of Webpacker, right? Did you remember? Yeah. So with the same thing goes with sass and CSS. So whatever we are writing sass, whatever we are writing in sass, so Webpacker should have to, or CSS, Node.js, there is kind of a separate entity which will be responsible for converting our sass to CSS, because our browsers don't understand sass. Got my point?
अच्छा, वो किससे होता है? ये CSS preprocessor से होता है क्या? That conversion from sass to CSS. Got it.
Okay. So अब styling का जो main other reason for the styling one. So give me a second. Okay, so then after the styling we are having with CSS frameworks. So Earlier days we don't have in our traditional applications, in our older days we don't have the frameworks and libraries for CSS, like building your libraries. So let me go through the one of the libraries we are having with in our there is a name which is Tailwind. So but before Tailwind we were having the Bootstrap. Bootstrap is very amazing in terms of developing your component based things. So now they are having with version 5. So if you can see here, there are actually a bunch of
what is the difference between that library and framework?
a library is a small kind of thing, like if I'm taking an example of React and Angular. So inside the React, like everything is like everything is done, everything is being exposed. You can you can use whatever you want, but there are some limitations inside the library. Like library is a very lightweight, and framework is not lightweight. It's kind of covering all of the things. It's a broad aspect. So this is the difference between library and
Angular and React are frameworks, is it? And the other things and all, those are libraries. The smaller things we saw, those are libraries.
Yeah. Like if I'm talking about jQuery, so jQuery is a library. So these kind of things, right? Now Bootstrap is a library. Bootstrap is library for what? Like if I'm taking an example here on your screen. So assume that there is a div, right? And after the div, let me make an input element so that I can show you. Give me a second. So after here, if I'm making an input, right? Okay, you can see this input, right? But this input is what? This is not styled, like it's a very like odd in a very odd way. But with the bootstrap, if I'm assigning a class to it, let me. So if you can see now how it look like, only with this single class. So it been converted the view from here to here. So this is what the main purpose of Bootstrap and these design system libraries are. You can you don't have to worry about, you don't have to create your own input elements, like everything is pre-built. If you are talking about select, so this component is also being developed. If you are talking about alerts, so alerts are also created. If you are talking about buttons, so buttons are already created. If you are talking about pop-ups, so pop-ups and modals are also being cleared. If you are talking about navigation bars and tab bars, so those are also being created. So you don't have
sorry. Can this be combined with any of our UI elements? Let's say I have a particular theme color, right? Let's say I have a blue color theme, right? So here already some styling is done inside Bootstrap, right? So that can it be modified to give a certain look?
Yes. They have their own options. So if you can go inside your utilities and you can convert your theme colors. So inside your variable.sass, inside the here, if you can see, Bootstrap is suggesting what, like these are the theme colors here. So whatever you can do is inside your variable.sass, if you are saying like, okay, my green color is different, so what you have to do, you have to change your success variable color from their green to yours green. So the whole library will work on that way. Got my point?
Got it. So it's highly customizable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what about Tailwind? Tailwind is also a library. Like it's been a utility based library, if you can see here in the video. So it's very powerful. People are using it, but it depends on your scenarios, like how we are using and what's the scope. But I can recommend if you are talking about not writing CSS and you are looking for only a customized way for using utilities, so you can go with it. Like you don't have to write a single line of CSS as well. Got my point?
Acha, so you're saying it takes even less development effort than Bootstrap?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the fastest way to do the front end development.
Yeah, exactly. It's very amazing. So you can take a look on it either way. So this is how, these are the libraries inside, these are the CSS frameworks. So Material UI, Bootstrap, Tailwind CSS, Semantic UI, like it depends. Like it depends on your needs. So like don't talk about this in detail. So there are actually styled component or atomic strategies. Atomic strategy is what, like assume that I'm developing a website, and inside that website what I want to do, I actually want to I actually want to give me a second. What I want to do is like I want to make my whole website. Like assume that inside that there is an input element, as I told you, and there are some buttons, there are some sliders. So before rather than making those pages directly, Atomic Strategy said you have to make your component styled first. Like like assume that inside my website, slider should have to be used, button should have to be used, input box should have to be used. So I have to wrap up those things first. I have to make a very small kind of documentation or a guideline inside which I use all of those components. Either I am using any Bootstrap library or what. I have to finalize those things first. Okay, I will be covering these input elements, I will be covering these buttons, I will be covering these sliders. So whatever there should be, so I will be doing those. So before going into the direct development, you should have to make your those things first. So first, yeah. Once this will be done, so after that you will be develop your components. Like assume that I have a chat component, then after, from my guidelines, I will be developing my chat components. I have a home page and a product listing, so I will be using those product listing component from my guidelines. So this is what Atomic Strategy said.
So first make guidelines of all the small items.
Yeah, and then start building your components.
Got it. So what is this? This is a style of software development, is it?
Yeah. Styling part.
So this is just a way of thinking about how to do it, or is there some kind of coding rules or something for this?
No.
This is just a way of solving a problem.
A way of solving a problem.
Got it. Okay. So इसके लिए अलग से कोई architecture framework वैसा कुछ चाहिए
नहीं? No.
This is a style of solving which the developer can adopt.
Yeah.
And ये बाकी भी हम cover कर लेंगे ना अभी this CSS modules and them कि ये एक ही style है, Atomic एक ही style है.
Atomic is a part, like those are some other parts which I also don't know, but like because these things, CSS modules and kind of things, because nowadays like it's also been like after this image, like things are actually been also been very synced. Like every component has its own CSS file, so it's also been covering those CSS modules part as well. Got my point? If I have a chat application, sorry.
So is Atomic?
Go ahead. Okay, so now we will be talking about the state management in the React part. So inside the state management is a very important kind of a thing, if we can say, inside for developing your web applications, or developing your mobile applications, or developing your desktop applications, whatever it should have to be. But the state management is a very healthiest part and very important part that your application requires. So state management is what? State management is for holding your data inside your application. So like assume that inside my React application, so what we have to do is there are actually a bunch of options. Like in my way, I'm using Redux with Thunk. So Thunk is a middleware, right? But before going into that deep inside, but before going into that detail, let's see how, like, what state management is and like why we need it.
हाँ हाँ
Okay, let me take you towards the image so you can better understand the things. Okay,
yes
so which one is good? Which one is good? So this one we can see. Okay.
right
Okay. So now inside the state management, like before going into that deep, we can understand like how it works. Okay. So state management is what, like assume that